Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am here with Sylvia from Success in Steps, the other floating head. I always do this the wrong way. On this side. She is amazing. She's a behavioral specialist, and she has worked wonders with me and my family and working with my daughter. So I thought I would bring her on that we can do a Q&A session with all of your behavioral questions. Now, I did ask in advance if we could get some questions from you guys, and we got a lot, an overwhelming amount, almost 20 different questions. So we're going to try to get through them all. If we don't, we'll figure out a backup plan, but we'll do our very best. So, well, first of all, thank you, Sylvia, for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, someone asked me the other day how I know you, and I honestly couldn't tell them. I couldn't remember how we'd met. But I know that you have changed my name. See, I know you probably can't remember either.
I've been with forever now. I know the ins and outs of everything. So
I know it just feels like you're just part of my life now. And so not only have we just sort of chat and become friends online, but I've also brought her on board to work with myself and my family to help with some of my behavioral issues for my daughter, Aubrey, who's almost 2.5. And I say, and I don't say this lightly, and I'm probably going to make Sylvia blush, but she has quite literally changed our lives and the way that we live our day-to-day lives. It was by far the best decision to hire her, and she's made all the difference. So I hope that she can help some of you with the questions today. I know she's one of those people that you just meet and you just, anyways, instantly love. So I'm hoping to help weed out some of the stuff in her brain to help you guys in the questions that you ask. So if you have questions, we'll answer questions live. I also have, again, almost 20 questions to answer that we're going to get through. But, throw up some hearts, comments, likes, let me know, and we'll get to the live ones as well. But before we get started, I want you guys to get to know Sylvia a little bit better. So she has agreed to do a rapid fire lightning round Q&A about her. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, so Sylvia used to be terribly shy too, so I
still am.
It's good. You got this. Okay, so 10 questions, rapid fire about you really quickly before we jump into the questions. Some of these should be easy, and if you don't know them, then how many kids do you have?
2.
How old are your kids?
11 and almost 9.
See, that's good. Yeah, that's good. What's your favorite weekday meal to make?
Well, I switch my meals every single week, so anything healthy and clean.
Oh, geez, you're motivated. You'll have to come to my house. Okay. What's your least favorite kids show?
Caillou and Teletubbies. I have 2. I don't even know if they still play those ones. One teaches you flying and one teaches you not to speak. So
cool. Yeah, I hear bad things about Caillou. We don't even start it in our house. What's your favorite kids snack?
Smoothies.
What's your favorite caffeinated drink?
Coffee. Dark roast.
My mouth just filled with saliva. Favorite alcoholic drink?
Red wine.
Dream date night. Dream date night.
Dream date night. Like no limitation, being whisked away.
You're a millionaire. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Going away for a long weekend and just doing fun, adventurous stuff, athletic stuff. I don't like just sitting in the sun type of thing. I want to do stuff together.
Be busy. Cool. What's your realistic date night with 2 kids?
Watching a movie indoors or going in the hot tub.
And what's your least favorite chore?
Laundry.
Yeah, I try to make my husband do that. Pardon?
Get the kids to do it.
See, there we go. We learned something already, guys. Put them to work. Okay, so like a behavioral consultant, just tell me a bit about your business, what you do, so people understand what it's like to work from you and how they can learn from you.
Sure. So in a nutshell of what I do, I help overwhelmed and frustrated parents spend less time on challenges in behavior and more time enjoying their family, because it is a possibility.
It is. That's exactly what happened with us. We went from spending, I would spend the night sort of crying in the kitchen while my daughter was screaming and my husband was dealing with her, or vice versa. to, hey, family time. My daughter's happy. It's lovely. You're magical. Anyways, what are the most common challenges you deal with parents on a day-to-day in your activities and role?
So as a parent consultant and having so much experience, though I've been in the field for 17 years working one-on-one with the children, I now help the parents overcome these challenges and behaviors. And the number one things I get the most of is families being overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, feeling as though they keep on failing because everything that they're trying is not working. Repetitive behaviors that they just don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, and it's so funny. That's how we felt as well. We tried absolutely everything. I listened to podcasts on my way to work. People on Instagram would always give me tips when they would see my tantrum posts. We tried everything. So that's absolutely how we felt, overwhelmed and exhausted and emotional. Because for the sake of time and because we have so many questions, really, really great questions, let's just jump right into the questions, if that's okay with you, and we'll get started. Anyone who's on the live right now, if we're not talking about your questions specifically and you have something that pops up, just pop it in the comments below and we'll bring it to Sylvia's attention and ask on live as well. So let me just share some of these questions here with you guys so that you can see them. Now, I'm a little bit biased. This is my question. So what do you do when a toddler sprints away from you in the store or isn't listening? What is sort of your quick and dirty tip for this?
Okay, so let me just, before I answer all the questions, explain how I work with families in case people are not sure exactly the process of it. So whenever I'm working with families, I'm looking at what your objectives are and looking at what your goals are in the long run. So whenever we're looking at a situation, we have to look at the why, the function of the behavior, so the why this is happening, and then we also have to look at what's maintaining the behavior, so what's feeding the behavior. So in order for a behavior to reoccur, it means that there's something there to maintain it, okay? So the why and what's maintaining it. So in looking at your question for your child, not listening and running away in the store, we have to look at why is she doing that? What is she trying to gain from that? Is she trying to escape something? Is she trying to get attention? Is she trying to access something that she wants, or is it sensory? So we have to always look at the reasoning behind it. So what's happening before it?
Okay, perfect. And I also want to have, I should have mentioned this at the beginning as well, that when working with Sylvia as well, like she was just saying, there's a root sort of cause to all the behavioral challenges, and each one of those is different. So the reason why my daughter is kicking, biting, and hitting me may be absolutely different than another toddler who's the exact same age. So the answers are dependent on that, right?
Very much so.
So if you had to give sort of a generalized tip to a parent who, this happened to a friend of mine the other day, was actually at the cash paying, debit card in the machine, kid just booked it out of the store, like turned, ran, and went, ha, 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 and sprinted. What's the quick and dirty solution for that at that point?
Okay, first I would need to know if this is a common behavior of this child. If it was a one-off, I would pull my card out, go get my kid, and bring my child back to where I was. But if this is a common behavior of the child, well, then you have to put some strategies in place to make the expectation clear for the child of what's to be next. And also working a lot towards motivation, right? So we chatted a lot about that and working together, and we always want to work towards the motivation of the child as opposed to bribery. So those are things as well that we want to add in there.
Yeah, Aubrey has control issues. So she just likes to manipulate us and the situation. So for her, that would just be, see if I can make something happen and stir shit up, right?
Yeah. And there's a time whereby you can ignore a behavior, but safety always comes first. So if your child's bolting in the store and they have access to going outside, well, obviously that would be the prime thing, is to drop whatever you're doing and get the child first and foremost, and then deal with the situation after the fact.
Okay, awesome. So the next one, and I hope you guys can read this. If not, I'll read it out loud. Here's a question that we received from one of the viewers. My 5-year-old is currently freaking out about all clothes. Shirts don't feel good. Nothing feels good. She ends up in tears and a screaming match whenever we have to leave the house. I'm alone in the mornings with my girls starting Monday, and I'm terrified. How will I get her to school on time? This sounds exhausting.
That does sound exhausting, and my heart goes out to this parent for sure, because mornings are extremely challenging as a whole for both parents and kids, because you're so pressed for time and there's so many things to do. But there are a lot of strategies you can put in place in order to set you guys up for success. For this particular situation, I'm just rereading it here. Finding out why her clothes don't feel well, having a discussion outside of the situation, so that, when children are upset, no matter how much you speak to them, you can't really have a conversation with them to really get an understanding of how they're feeling and really, sorry, I lost that word there, but literally being able to, you don't want to negotiate with them, but you want to actually have a coherent conversation with your child. And in the moment is not when it's going to happen. So having a conversation outside of that, when they're more calm or more collective, when they're engaged in a preferred activity, and having that conversation, like, what is it about your clothes that doesn't make you feel good? Is it the tags? Is it too snug? And starting that conversation so that you can avoid having to deal with it in the crisis of in the morning, and picking the clothes out the night before as well.
That's a good tip too. So sort of cutting it off at whatever that expression is.
Yeah. So you don't want to do it when your child is extremely tired, like close to bedtime, because you don't want to start going into this whole negotiation with your child. You want to do it when they've just finished having dinner, when they have a full tummy, but they still have energy. You go and select their clothes, and then afterwards they can have some free time after that. That way the next morning, if they want to select, it's time to get dressed, and they know what they have to wear. And you can always have a backup as well. If your child is indecisive of what they want to wear in the morning, or like to change their mind last minute, you can 2 different outfits for them to, we all feel like, maybe want to wear that the next day, but then all of a sudden we wake up and we're like, oh, I don't feel comfortable in that today, and we want to change our outfit. Just make it easier for the kid as well.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I like that. Okay, so moving on here. Again, if anyone has any live questions, let us know. We're going to keep plugging away through this list. But feel free to jump in if you have any questions. The next question is, my little one says mine. Aubrey does this as well, by the way, now. For everything, and has a major meltdown when we touch whatever he's claimed.
Okay.
Mine. Aubrey says, my mommy, my daddy, my toys, mine, my computer, my pup pad. So what for this one? Mine, and then a meltdown.
Yeah.
Any quick and dirty tips for this one?
Ignore it. So if your child is doing it for attention seeking, but it has nothing in conjunction to something else, like if say they're picking something up and they say mine, but it's not going to affect someone else, they're just starting to label things, that's mine, just ignore it. Because if you're providing them with negative attention, it's going to reinforce their behavior. So the more attention you bring to it, the more it's going to encourage it for it to occur. Whereas if you have something and they grab something out of your hand, for example, and they say mine, then you can very politely say, no, that's mommy's water bottle. Your water bottle's over there, for example. So you can label things so that they understand what is truly theirs and what is yours. If they pick up something else and it is theirs, and you can say, yeah, you're right, that is yours. And so there's certain times whereby you can acknowledge it, and there's times that I would encourage you to ignore it.
Just ignore it altogether. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so let me just pull up the next question here. So I'm going to read this one as well because it's a bit longer. I'm trying to get my 7-year-old daughter weaned off of coming to sleep with me every night. She says she is scared to be alone to sleep, and no matter what I try to get her to find her room more intriguing, it doesn't help because the root of the issue is that she's afraid to sleep alone. It doesn't help that her father always sleeps with her when she is at his home. Dads always make it more difficult, don't they?
Whenever parents are not on the same page, that's when it is extremely difficult. So before you try any new strategy to tackle a situation, you need to get parents, guardian, whoever it is that is responsible for the child onto the same page. There are two things that I always stress with families when I'm working with them. Number one, make expectations clear. Number two, consistency is key. You can't be flopping from one dealing with a situation one way and then another parent dealing with the situation a completely opposite way. What you're doing is you're sending your child mixed messages, and so they're not too sure how they're supposed to be reacting to it. And what that does, it actually maintains the negative or challenging behavior even more. So first off, for this situation, you need to get onto the same page. So this is a discussion that you should have with the father away from the daughter, so she doesn't hear this conversation take place, and really come to an agreement of how you want to tackle the situation.
Okay, that makes sense. So before you can actually tackle the situation of how to be scared alone, the very, very first baseline step is to make sure that you're on the same page.
Absolutely. Or else, even if you try implementing a strategy, there's always going to be someone that's negatively reinforcing the behavior, right? Bringing the attention to the behavior. So it's going to encourage it. So no matter how hard one parent tries to make that behavior go away and make her allow her to get, if someone's allowing her the opposite, no matter what you do, it's really not going to work in your best interest, unfortunately. You need to be on the same page.
And I can imagine that conversation in itself, depending on the situation between the parents, would be tricky, but it sounds like it's an important challenge to tackle.
Absolutely, but we have to always think about for this situation, we always have to think of what is it in the best interest of the child. So yes, it might provide us a lot of comfort to snuggle with their children before going to bed or falling asleep with them. But then what is it in the best interest of our child? Do we want to encourage our child to have separation anxiety? Do we want to encourage our child to be fearful of the dark and not being able to go to sleepovers and stuff like that, which are those rite of passage as they grow older? Or can we look at other ways whereby we can provide that cuddle time? Can we spend extra time with them before they go to sleep? Okay. Ways around it, but we also have to look at why this child's feeling this way as well. What is her function? Is it because she has a legitimate phobia of the dark, or is it a separation anxiety and insecurity? There's so many different things to go by, but being on the same page is by far the number one thing you have to get on first.
Okay. So we have a question in here live from Brianna. It is, how do you integrate your strategies into a family that practices attachment parenting? Do you have, I'm assuming that you've dealt with situations like this. It's not specific to one set of challenges, but how do you integrate them into attachment parenting?
So whenever I'm working with a family, I really look at, I take each family as a very unique situation. So each family gets a very tailored approach with me. So whenever I am starting off with a family, for our first session is always a little bit longer. It's 75 minutes. It's my intake session with the family. And that's where I understand not only the strengths and needs of the child, but the strengths and needs of the parents and their parenting style. Because the way I parent is different the way you parent, right? And everyone else. So by taking in everyone's approach, even for attachment parenting, I look at what their objectives are. And I'm always working with the objectives of the parents in mind. Not what my ultimate goals are, but what their ultimate goals are. Because we all have some people are fine with co-sleeping and stuff like that, and that's totally fine. I work with whatever the objectives of the families are.
And it's funny, just a personal anecdote on that as well. I remember, and you probably don't remember this, but I remember this moment very specifically when we were working together in one of our sessions. And I had mentioned something about she was whining because she wanted the TV. And then she stopped whining. She asked nicely. And I sort of looked at you because I expected you to criticize me for letting her watch TV at 4:00 in the afternoon, because so often you assume that TV time is horrible. And I remember you just looked at me and said, is this part of your family routine? Do you guys watch TV at this time? And I said, yeah, you know what? Sometimes we do. Well, it is what it is. You said, okay, perfect. She asked nicely. Let's watch an episode of Paw Patrol. And it was really, I was very surprised in that moment that you weren't TV shaming me. It felt really good.
No, I don't shame anyone. Everyone has their own parenting styles and their own rules. So I respect everyone else's rules. There's no judgment on my part. My part is only to help you where you want to be helped. If that wasn't objectives, then that's where I would guide you to it. But you'll never have two senses from me where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, no, it was really reassuring, to say the least. Okay, so jumping back into some of the questions, how to meal plan? How do you meal plan for a large family with 6 different dietary requirements? This is a tricky one. I don't even know what I would suggest to this, to be honest.
Well, coming from me, I have food allergies, and I have my son who has he's lactose, and it's very tricky with him with what he eats as well. I have my son who prefers vegetables. He calls himself a vegetarian, and my daughter is omnivore. So, once they get to their plate, one eats all her meat, and he eats all his veggies combined, and you have a nice, well-balanced plate again for the third person. But no, they do eat their respective meat and vegetable. They know that they have to. But how to plan for a large family with 6 is depending on how old your children are. Get your children involved. Make your meal plans together. Spend some time on Sundays to decide what the meals are going to be for the week and write them on a dry erase board. That way we're compromising with everybody to see, this might not be something that you like to have, but if, it really depends on what the dietary restriction and how complex they are from one person to the other. We can provide different options when we're having that discussion together as a family. But if it's a little kids, there's great strategies that you can use to get them involved as well. So it really depends on the age of the children.
I think she did ask another question, and they were older. Some of them were in the teenage years. But then again, I also have friends who really struggle with toddlers as well and pickiness, right? So, eating seems to be a very common challenge.
Eating is a very big challenge because nowadays I find with the families that I work with, one, there's dietary restrictions, but a lot of the other times it's because it's the boundaries and the expectations, and also culturally as well, right? If we, as I've been brought up as Italian family whereby, manja, you're eating they want you to eat all the time. But you know what? Kids' tummies are only so big. So if we're having a picky eater, what we want to do is actually reduce the amount of food on their plate so that we're setting them up for success, so that when they do complete what they eat on their plate, they feel accomplished.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
Amount of food on their plates. But but if her children are older, get them involved. Get them to help with prep work. And prep the stuff and put it in the fridge for the week and stuff. The more involved you get your family to participate for meals, the more that they appreciate it as well. So it's not only taking a load off the parents for preparing this stuff, but you're also getting them to understand the responsibilities. They're feeling a part of something, and they're more appreciative of the labor-intensive components there are to prepping food. And then everyone gets their own opinion as well of what they can add as dinner ideas.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting involved in that. It's something to do that kills time as well.
Kids as well, they love feeling that they're needed.
Yeah. Okay, so another long one, but I actually very much relate to this as well. We have the issue of our toddler mimicking other kids' behaviors when we're out or if we have friends over for a play date. He gets so excited that he acts up and throws things, which scares me since I don't want his friends or their parents taking a dinosaur to his face. I like this mom and how she writes. It's a legitimate concern. His other thing is that he's so easily influenced by other children's behaviors, and it's so difficult to discipline when he's watching the other children misbehave without any discipline or consequences. We often do playgroups, and he'll crash his car into someone else's tower of blocks because another child did it. I tell him he's not allowed to drive cars since he wasn't being safe and make him apologize. Meanwhile, other kids are doing it and their caregivers aren't acknowledging it. So naturally, the toddler giggles and wants to continue crashing. This mom is stressed.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that this mom is stressed, but this is a very, very, very common challenge. I'm assuming that, issues with it's a toddler. I would love to know really the age of this child, because there's different developmental milestones. We have to keep in mind that, so it's a boy. So we need to keep in mind that kids like to play rough as well. And there is a fine line between, crashing towers and stuff like that, making all these sound effects and explosions and all that. That's what's really fun for kids, right? They get really active. If you see other children playing that way, there's a certain boundary that we have to allow them to kind of play in that nature, because this is the way that they're exploring developmentally as a toddler. However, what's really challenging is when you're seeing behaviors take place and you're disciplining your child and other parents are not disciplining their children. I've been faced in those situations many times as my kids were little. And my word of advice for that is to continue to discipline your child, but take them aside so that your child's actually listening to what you're saying to them. Because in the context of them playing, they're so excited about playing, they're not really attending to you. So looking eyes are listening ears. That's always what I say for the little ones, because you know that if you have their eyes, you also have their ears. And that way they're actually listening to what you're saying. So you took down the question there, Erica, for this mom, I would say to continue disciplining and also making expectations known in advance before a play date.
Okay, perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of removing them from the situation as well. Okay, so actually, this is a friend of mine. She has her 3-year-old who's recently started baby talk at random points during the day and then gets frustrated when we don't give her what she's asking for. She's going to be a big sister soon, too, so I'm assuming it has something to do with that.
So, congratulations to your friend for having she's expecting a baby, I'm assuming here.
Yeah, we're due around the same time, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So congrats. And in terms of this 3-year-old that recently started the baby talk, I would ignore the baby talk and encourage your child to use their words. So if this little one knows how to talk and doesn't have any speech delays and there's no underlying issues, then it's more of encouraging your child to speak. And so if your child is doing the baby talk, I mean, there comes to a point whereby, you get so tired and as a parent, you're just like, okay, yeah, they're speaking like a baby, but they're asking for milk, and all you want to do is go and sit down or go and get something else done. So what you do, you hand them over the milk because you're just tired of hearing the baby talk. As much as that's a reality, and I'm sure I've done it as well when they were younger, we're reinforcing that negative behavior. So take the time to encourage them to speak and only provide it to them when they do use their words properly. That way we're encouraging them to speak clearly the following time as well. Perfect.
No, that seems pretty good. Okay, we're moving along here because we're running short on time and have a few extra questions to go. My 20-month-old will demand things rather than ask. Sounds like Aubrey. What is the best way to show we can nicely, politely at such a young we can ask nicely and politely at such a young age? It has to start young, but I'm not sure how to make her understand without her getting upset. Also, when did the no phase end? So I think really how to get a 20-month-old to start using her pleases and thank yous. I don't know what the level of speech is for this child.
Okay, so that's actually a key component in order to answer this question properly. So let's just presume that this child has, short sentence structure, 1, 2, 3 word phrases together, has fluency with her language. Well, then I would prompt them. So how do we ask? Use your words. So we don't provide it to them unless they're asking nicely. And if we don't like the way we ask, we can model it for our child as well. You can, if they're yelling at you, or are they yelling?
No, I don't think so. I think they're they're getting upset. So I suppose that could mean something different to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So show how we ask nicely. A child, say to a 20-month-old, you need to ask nicely. They might not necessarily know what you're referring to, so you need to model that for them. Like, oh, you need to say, "Can I have milk, please?" Or, by modeling it and then them repeating it is showing them how to speak nicely. And also, when does the no phase end? You can have it never ends. It depends on how you deal with the situation, truly, because it depends on what the function of the behavior is. If you're asking them to do something and they're saying no, well, then there's a different follow through compared to if they're trying to get attention from you, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me just put up this next question here. So how do you suggest talking to the school so teachers will listen and implement necessary strategies for special needs children, FASD?
Okay. So there's a lot. Okay, when we're talking about the schools, it depends on what age the child's at. There's different policies in place with the schools. So, kindergarten, toddler, sorry, my kids go to French school, so junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten. There's only so many support services that are available for that age group compared to someone that's in the grade 1 to 6. So it really depends on what age the child's at. And also it depends on, well, this one's a fully loaded question, because when we're talking about the school board, there's a bunch of things that you need to take into consideration. If your child has a diagnosis, then you would provide that to the school. Assuming that the school knows that your child has a diagnosis, then your child would be slated for an IEP, an individual education plan. Those are typically performed at the end of September and then get signed off in October with the resource teacher. So within those, you're talking about the strengths and needs of the child, and there's certain measures put in place for your child to be supported so that they can have a successful school year. Sorry, lots of talking here, but
no, it sounds like like you said, it's a loaded question in the sense that there's so much meat to the answer to this, and I know that this is actually very much your background as well. So maybe what I can suggest then is, Sylvia and I talked about doing additional Facebook Lives on specific topics. This could be one that might be beneficial. Dealing with schools and strategies for special needs children. So we can elaborate on that as well further.
Yeah, because it's such a specific, narrow question, but it's really so broad because there's so many different pieces that are missing here for me to really answer that. I could speak forever about how to handle things this way, but I might not even reach what this parent has had in mind in terms of this question.
Okay, sounds good. So let's, oopsie. What did I do here? There we go. Okay. So lying. So the next question is how to deal with lying, taking things without asking, or sneaky behavior, sneaking things, and what would be an appropriate consequence as what we've done hasn't tried. It's a 6-year-old child they're referring to.
Okay. Again, this is a fully loaded question because I don't know what, I know, right? It's like
sorry, throwing all these tough balls at you.
No, because every situation is very specific. So, just looking at this, I would need to know what they tried in the past. What worked, what didn't work, why, what the function of the behaviors. Is it because there's very, the household's very rigid and they only have access to certain thing, and because they're trying to access a tangible, they're trying to obtain something? Is it because this child has an obsession to something and they're trying to fuel that? There's so many different reasons as to the function, the why behind it. And also we have to know why it's being maintained. So what the strategies or what they've tried doing so far is not working, but why? So I need to know what's maintaining that behavior. So it's kind of hard to provide an answer for that one.
Okay, so maybe if this is your question and you're watching, you can send me a PM to Mum Break, and we can answer this subsequently in future lives as well. Okay, so you know what? Maybe here, let's put it this way. What is your one tip for dealing with sarcastic teenager behavior? And I think I know based on what working with you what it's going to be, but what would you say it is?
Well, it really depends. When we're talking about teenager, it really depends on their personality. So you can either handle it one of two ways. You can completely ignore it and just move on, or you can throw back the sarcasm at them.
Really? That's not what I was expecting you to say.
Well, that's what, because we're talking about teenage. So then that's why I said it really depends on their personality. Because my daughter is 11 years old and has some amazing sarcasm. She really does.
That's hilarious at 11.
But there's a certain time whereby I completely ignore it, right? Because depending on the situational and the context of where the sarcasm, if I ask her to do something and I get sarcasm in return, well, then I'm ignoring it. But if she's having sarcasm in context to something that's more light and like playful and not based on something that I've asked her to do or something like that, then I'll throw sarcasm back at her. And then what often ends up happening is we both have a really good laugh.
And it's a bonding experience too. Like, I can't wait to have witty, sarcastic banter with my daughter. That sounds amazing.
It's so amusing and so much fun. But like I said, it depends on the context of the sarcasm. So if it is because you've asked them to do something, you place a demand and they're trying to escape something, completely ignore it. Listen to music. Put whatever distractor you need in order to restrain yourself from saying anything.
Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is fight back in that situation. Okay, so next question. My 8-year-old son who has GAD often worries about things that are not generally of concern for someone of his age, like time. If he will make it to school on time, if we're going to be late for a movie, or if I or his dad go out and take longer than expected. This has become evident in play, for example. If we allot him time to play a video game or go to a friend's house, he's very conscious of the time and becomes anxious when time is running out. When we attempt to talk to him about it, his choice of expressing himself is to say that we don't care about him and that we don't want him in our family. Oh, that's so sad. Something we have never and would never say. Poor kid. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry that your child is faced with general anxiety disorder, and know that there are a lot of kids nowadays that are facing anxiety, and it's a very tricky situation. And at the same time, from my experience, both personal experience and also when working with families between the ages of 6 and 8 is generally when the anxiety really starts to come to light. There's a lot of underlining questions that I would ask this family truly to help them out. But for one, I would want to know if this child becomes upset if they're late for something. I would also want to know if if he's rigid. It's a he. If he's rigid about things, if you're allowed to be a little bit more flexible with stuff. Does he get if you tell him that he can have more time and that you're not running out of time, is he very specific? Like if you tell him, okay, it has to end at 5 o'clock, is there any flexibility with that? What is he anxious about? Is he there's a lot of things with this question. It's really open-ended because what does he do when he becomes anxious? Is there any self-harm? Is there does he get emotional about it? Is there any sensory things that become into play? Does he have any coping strategies? Are there any coping strategies that we can put into place? Are there any triggers or any warning signs of what happens prior to him becoming anxious? So there's a lot of things here. Unfortunately, Erica, I can't answer this question specifically, but also if they wanted to PM you on that one, then I can definitely assist with that. But there are many strategies that you can help a child that has anxiety, because once we teach them a coping strategy and we let them know how they can do this on their own and then generalize it so that they understand, then they're more successful and we can reduce the anxiety. Making expectations extremely clear, talking about different scenarios. There's different, if they like to draw, if they like to write, there's a lot of hands-on activities that you can do with your child outside of the context to set them up for success as well. I've worked with many kids that many families that have children with anxiety, and depending on the personality and what motivates that child, there's different strategies that we can assist them.
And you do consultation calls as well, right? So this is something that someone could call and have a quick chat with you about. Because I mean, these are, like as you said, every problem. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word problem, but that's how I refer to my daughter's biting and hitting. I say it's her problem. Is there's individual reasons why things are happening. So it's really hard to know. And that was one of the benefits I found from working with you, is that a lot of the advice I saw online wasn't actually applicable for us and wasn't helpful because it didn't address the root problem. So until we started working with you and having strategies that were targeted specifically to my daughter, we didn't start noticing any results until that happened. So maybe this individual as well could do that. And again, feel free anyone to PM me and I'll connect you with Sylvia as well. Okay, so moving on to the next question. My biggest issue is my 2.5-year-old daughter roughhouses with my 9-month-old. This is one of my biggest fears right now. She's been really rough on him since he was born. Nothing I do seems to help. She doesn't really hit or bite him anymore, but now that he's crawling and active, she will pick him up, pull him, throw him if she can, and I don't get there on time. When she hugs him, it's not a hug. It's her squeezing with all of her might, either around his chest or neck. I'm at a loss. I feel like I've tried everything. This is a tricky one for me, from my perspective as a rough one with a daughter who's very rough and a baby in my belly.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about this challenge. This is a very delicate one, right? Because you have a toddler and you have a 9-month-old who is a very delicate baby that we need to protect as well. And so really with this one, I encourage you to model the behavior. Model what you want your daughter, model what you want your daughter to do with the baby. Show her, explain to her. So using a lot of verbal with modeling behavior. This is the way we hold, you're the little brother. This is how we give a gentle hug. Oh, remember, gentle, you want to give a hug? Sure, remember, gentle hug. Show mommy what a gentle hug looks like, and then giving a gentle hug. You're going to have to spend more time priming your child of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Also spending the extra time, and I know, having a 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old, you have a tired parent that's always on the go. So I'd like to provide a strategy that is one that you can maintain, but really it's a matter of keeping the baby out of her daughter's reach as much as possible. That would be the best antecedent strategy, like the best measures to take place, so that if you can't get to them on time, that at least you know that the baby's safe. Which I'm sure this mother is doing, but if one's in a swing and the other one's playing beside them and they're playing fine on 1 second and then all of a sudden something's happening, it's hard if you can't always have your eyes on the children, right? When you're in your home. So really modeling appropriate behavior and being descriptive and also showing things with by example as well.
Yeah, no, that seems to make sense.
And you can also put limits as to where the baby can be touched as well. We don't touch the baby in the face. We don't touch the baby.
Oh, yeah.
Touch the baby's hand. You can touch baby's feet and give like zones whereby they're allowed to, so that the expectation is clear as to what's off limits and what's okay.
Okay. So moving on to the next question. My 3-year-old doesn't stop talking ever until we're in public. If we're meeting someone for the first time, going to the dentist or doctor, she's too shy to open up her mouth or even stand on the scale. People leave the room, she jumps up onto the scale and doesn't stop talking.
I love these kids with these personalities. My daughter was like that. It's a personality thing.
So don't worry about it.
I wouldn't stress too much about it. I wouldn't belittle them when they leave the room. Like if you're at the doctor's office and all of a sudden, like, oh, why did you speak to the doctor when the doctor was in and now you're talking? That's not going to do any benefit. what you can do is you can prime the child beforehand, like the doctor's going to come in, and he or she's going to ask you some questions, and you can answer them. But if she doesn't feel, maybe she's just shy, you can shake your head yes or shake your head no, or you can use your words, those kind of things, and model what the expectations are in advance.
Yeah. So this is oh, she sounds really cute. The opposite of my daughter, who screams all the time.
And we're going to have children that are going to feel more comfortable around certain people, right? And as soon as there's a stranger or an unfamiliar person come into play, then all of a sudden they lose their confidence and they're like, and that's totally fine too. We kind of want to nourish that personality because they'll develop at their own pace. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, remember that time whereby you never spoke to anybody? Now you're like a chatterbox.
A lot of toddler questions, which isn't surprising considering that's the stage I'm in and all I want to do is drink and I can't because I'm pregnant. What do you do when your 2.5-year-old hits you when they get upset and they hit you over everything? And it's funny, just so the people who are watching know that this is actually one of the reasons why I hired Sylvia. I remember specifically putting my daughter to bed one night, rocking in the chair, and she was like hitting and biting me, attacking me, and I just burst into tears because I didn't know what to do anymore. She was being so aggressive and so violent, and I remember thinking, and I think this a lot, but I remember actually genuinely thinking that she's going to turn into a psychopath. Like I don't say that lightly, but at that particular moment, I was like, holy crap, like I have the next Stalin. So that was one of the reasons why I hired Sylvia, and she was able to help me with this particular problem. So what would you suggest in general? Again, there's a lot of triggers to this, but for this particular issue.
So when your 2.5-year-old's hitting you when they're upset, we have to look at why are they upset? Is it because you took something away from them? Is it because, you stopped a preferred activity? If they're hitting you over everything, you have to make it very clear that hitting's not acceptable. So it's like no hitting or no whatever the behavior is. We never want to say just no. We always want to say no and whatever the behavior is, because we want to make it very clear to them what we're telling them that is not acceptable. And then we have to look, really, it depends on what the function of the behavior is here. Are they hitting you to get your attention? Are they hitting you to access something? Are they hitting you to escape a demand? So depending on what the function is, I would have a different strategy to provide for the follow through. As Erica, when working with you, there was different scenarios whereby we would deal with it one way, depending on where we would deal with it another way. There's different follow throughs.
Well, and that was the best part of working with you, is because it wasn't just and I sort of compare working with you to working with a sleep consultant in a way, because you're getting a customized, personalized plan. But before, with a sleep consultant, like you can go in and you can get like a high level, this is what you do to put your kid to sleep. Bam, 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 bam. And it doesn't always work. And then as soon as something outside of that realm of the structure happens, you don't know what to do and you're at a loss. So that was one of the things that for this particular situation that I found really helpful working with you, was that and I refer to it sort of affectionately as the playbook. We have a playbook of, if this happens, then we do this. If this happens, and then we do this. And then if a situation outside of that happens, I email you in a panic and you add to the playbook, right? So it's like for me with hitting, I'm trying to think of what worked best, but I think just because of all the other subsequent work, it sort of just fizzled out. But yeah, no, that's a good one. Okay. That question really holds near and dear to my heart. So why do kids chew their fingernails? This is a really interesting one because I have no idea. And I've been a nail biter my whole life. It's been a constant struggle. I got him to stop. I don't know the age of this child, but I was at a loss as to why it started. My first didn't do this. Was it a coincidence? Was it related to cleanliness?
So for some kids, it's anxiety. It's a coping strategy. They bite their nails. Some it's lack of confidence, low self-esteem. And you know what? Little kids do have low self-esteem and confidence issue as well. It doesn't manifest in the same way as an older child. So, they can't really express themselves. So what do? You have to start paying attention to the pattern of when they do it. if your child literally just biting all the time, that's just a force of habit.
Yeah.
They might like the way it feels when you're biting your nail, and you know how it gets right to the end. They might like that feeling of that pain that you kind of feel from it, or you know, it then, you know, when you break your nail and then it feels a little bit more sensitive, they might like that feeling. So we always have to look at the why behind any kind of behavior that way. But then if it's not just all the time and it's happening every single time you do a drop off, well, there might be some anxiety or some insecurity about drop off at school. If it's happening every single time that you're going to a new environment, well, maybe it's because they don't know what to expect and they have low self-esteem, or they're feeling uncomfortable. It doesn't even have to be self-esteem. It's just they're not feeling comfortable with their environment. So if we start paying attention to patterns of when they're actually engaging in these behaviors, we can have a better understanding as to what is the root cause of them biting their nails.
Okay, perfect. So two more quick questions here. Over the middle child. So the question is, and I don't have it up on the screen, how do you overcome the middle child forgotten syndrome?
I'm a middle child.
Were you forgotten?
Not forgotten, but it's different to be a middle child. Anyways, we won't go into that. But middle child is, well, for every child, right? Think about it from, I'm going to speak to this from a parent perspective, right? And Erica, you can even think about it for yourself right now. You know, you have Aubrey, and you have, quote unquote, all the time in the world for Aubrey because you don't have another child. So you're able to do certain things with Aubrey that, even though no matter how hard you try, and I'm setting you up for your clear expectations, no matter how hard you try, when baby number 2 comes along, you won't be able to do everything you did for Aubrey for this one. And not to say that that's a bad thing.
Mom guilt, though.
No, well, and we're going to have mom guilt regardless, right? But the reality is that you just have another person to take care of. So you have to, it's more of a balancing act, right? You could still have that special time and all those kind of things. But as you have more children, you have to split up your time, right? And so so the question was like, how do you make sure that the child is not forgotten? Is that what it was?
Yeah, just how to deal with middle child syndrome. Middle child forgotten syndrome.
Make sure that you're allocating enough time for each child specifically.
Okay.
Is really what it comes down to. So if you're going to have a story time with one kid, make sure you have story time with another child, or have it all together. But I really encourage families that when you do have more than one child, that you do have like special moments of just mommy and me moment with each child, and that could be on, you know, a set date within the calendar every single month, or every single or day of the week. It makes the child feel so special. They have your undivided attention. So put your devices away, put everything, and even if it's just for like 15 minutes, make them feel special, because everyone else is not going to be attended to. You have it's just you, me and you know, like you and mommy type of thing, and having that special bond, and that's where it's going to make all children feel special and included and such.
Okay, so I'm going to end on one last question, and this one's mine because I asked you this question when we were working together. What do you specifically tell parents who feel like they're the only ones going through these behavioral challenges? I often tell people, Aubrey, you know, I joke about her being a sociopath or a psychopath, and I feel like sometimes I'm alone and I'm the only one dealing with my specific set of challenges. What is the piece of advice you give to parents who have those emotions and feelings?
You're not alone.
You're just not, you see this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like these are normal occurrences for you.
You mean, you're not alone. Every parent deals with them at one point or another. You know, when you become a parent, you don't receive a manual, guys. It's like when you're driving a vehicle, all of a sudden, well, back in the day when I don't even know how driving test works anymore, I'll figure that out when my daughter goes for her license. 365 was in play. You know, you knew that you had to do your driving test, you know, practice, you had to go for driving school, you did your 365, you did your driving test, and then you knew how to drive a car. Well, that kind of manual doesn't happen when you become a parent. And there's so many different factors that come into play, because you can have a colicky baby, my number 1 child. You can have a child with acid reflux, my number 2 child. You can have, health issues, which I had with my 2nd child. So there's so many different things that come into play that it's not a cookie cutter approach when you're coming to parenting. And also it's your values. It's what you believe in. It's what, everyone's brought up differently. Some people want to carry on how they were brought up culturally, or, just the way their parents brought, and other people like, I don't even want to even go near this, the mannerisms, or like the way my parent brought me up. I don't want to do that with my child. I want to do something different. So it really depends on so many different factors, really, that really at the end of the day, you're not alone. Everyone's facing challenges. Everyone's dealing with behaviors. It's how you respond to those behaviors that's either going to put them at bay, or it's going to make them continue. But there's no shame, or there's nothing to lose of your pride for asking for help. Everyone needs help once in a while, and if anything, it makes you stronger to ask for help, because you're dealing with the situation. Early intervention, so that you can enjoy your family time a lot longer than having to deal with all the constant challenges in behavior and be stressed out and overwhelmed all the time. So it's really a choice there.
Which I guess that ties in really nicely to a summary of the chat. I'm sorry, I told Sylvia I would only keep her on for half an hour, and then I overloaded her with every single question I could possibly find from everybody on all the mom groups. So thank you so much for taking the time and powering through those, and especially to those of you who took the time and submitted the questions. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to reach out to Sylvia and further your discussions, or continue on in that conversation, how can people find you?
So they can either go to my Facebook page, Success in Steps, or they can go to successinsteps.ca, my website, and they can schedule a time to chat with me over the phone. I do free initial consults with families, so they can get a better sense of what I do, and also for me to get a sense of what their challenges are and if I can assist them with them. And then we would go from there.
And what kind of programs and packages do you offer? Because I know for myself, you came to my home, you assessed my family, you worked with continuing email and in-person support. I'm assuming everything is customized depending on the family and the situation.
Yeah, so everything's customized based on the family and situation. I offer one-on-one services, mainly through virtual services through Zoom, but also coming to the comfort of your home if it's with your child that you want me to work with as well. So in the example of working with you, Erica, I come to the family's home, and the primary reason is because your child is more comfortable in their own home. So you don't have to spend time trying to create or contrive the behaviors outside of the home. Your child will always act differently outside of their home than in their home. So that's why I go to the parent and the family's home. So one-on-one services, either I have a 1-month package or I have a 3-month package that I work with families. And I also do workshops, and I actually have a workshop coming up at the end of the month, starting January 29th. And it's a 3-part series, 1 hour a piece on Mondays for an hour. And it's called Finding Balance to Your Family's Chaos, talking really about more of the functions of the behaviors in more detail and what's maintaining them, and providing you with concrete strategies on how to deal with certain situations.
No, that sounds perfect. Just because, and again, I will scream your praises off the rooftop to anyone and everyone. And I know that I've shared a lot about my experiences on Insta stories and Facebook, and a lot of people have found that valuable and that they're not alone. And I'm actually, what I've done, actually, this is the first time I've told you guys, is I've actually captured my experience working with Sylvia on the back end. So I've sort of documented it really through all the highs and lows, through some of our consultations. I have actual video footage of me. I don't know if I told you this, Sylvia, but like bawling in my dining room while Aubrey is in the other room. She's in the middle of a 2-hour tantrum. And that was obviously at the beginning of us working together, before we got the strategies implemented. but I'll share that as well, so that people can understand a little bit what it's like working with you. But it's quite honestly been life-changing. Yesterday, you'll be happy to hear, one of the struggles we dealt with too with Sylvia was we had meltdowns every bedtime for a while, and she was a great sleeper for a while. But last night or 2 nights ago, she walked up the stairs, said bedtime, walked into her bedroom, stood at her crib and said bed. And I just was like, okay, we'll go with this. Picked her up and put her in the crib. And she's like, night, night, mommy. Love you. It's like, what just happened? And then so it was like the 15-second bedtime. It was, I mean, that's obviously not what it's gonna be like every time, but holy cow, that was the best bedtime ever. That would have never happened without you.
Oh, you're sweet. But it wouldn't happen without me. But if you guys don't follow the strategies, if you're not consistent with it, then it wouldn't happen either, right? You guys have to be consistent with it, and that's what's so great is that you guys are consistent with the strategies, and so you guys get to benefit from the results. So good job, you guys, for being consistent and following through and doing such an amazing job. High five.
I know, she always makes me feel so good when I talk to her. So thank you again so much for joining. We're going to be doing, and I've convinced her to come on and do additional Facebook Lives about topic specific. So they'll be a bit shorter, a little bit more specific to individual challenges and problems. So if there's anything that you guys out there watching would like to see or feel is a key problem for you, let me know and we can tackle that on some of the subsequent Facebook Lives. And you can reach Sylvia at successinsteps.com, right? .ca, sorry, habit. And you can book a free 15-minute consult if you want to tackle a bit deeper into some of these issues. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Sylvia, for letting me steal an hour of your life.
It's all good. I'm happy to be here. And those were a lot of great questions. And I apologize in advance if you didn't get the answer that you were specifically looking for. But really, there's a lot more to a behavior than a simple answer, and there's a lot of tail work that comes into play for me to actually provide you with a strategy that's going to be beneficial for your family in the situation of why these behaviors are happening to begin with. So, yeah.
No, absolutely, and I can speak to that firsthand since you have provided me such a structured, tailored plan. It's really made all the difference in the world. So. I think people understand that. Although I understand that everyone kind of gets to the end of their rope, right? So it's difficult.
It is difficult. And, it kind of, you mentioned at one point about reading a lot of books and listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And all those things are absolutely great, but they're very general terms and they don't translate sometimes to your specific situation. And then even if you try to implement a strategy that you read from a self-help book or that you listen on a podcast, the challenge is for us as parents is that if we don't see progress, we want to give up because we think it's not working. But that's not generally always the case either, as you know firsthand as well, Erica. Sometimes it gets, when you're trying to push on a new expectation, sometimes it gets harder or the behavior gets worse before it gets better because we're really changing how things are for our children, and what used to work for them no longer is, so they're showing some resistance on it. So really having that support to moving you forward to getting to where you want to be sometimes is a little bit more work at the beginning, but it's totally worth it at the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So if anyone has any questions about Sylvia and wants to ask me about her, I'm happy to share all of my experiences with you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And we'll be back with more of you because you've changed my life.
I'm happy to have helped.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for everyone who joined. And we'll be back with more Facebook Lives in the near future. Bye.